You've seen the Higher Education Minister Nzimande saying the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, can now disburse funds for first-year students. It's had a big shortfall caused by COVID-19 and other factors. At the same time, we've seen the big issues in funding first years and students who want to study at higher education institutions. But government today announcing a comprehensive review of the student funding policy. Professor Ahmed Bauer is the CEO of University South Africa. Professor Bauer, good afternoon to you. I presume, first off, you're glad to hear that NSFAS is now going to open applications for funding for first-year students.
Good afternoon, Stephen, and thank you for having me again. Well, it's a mixed story for the universities. So first of course, we're very pleased that the first-time entry students from poor and working class backgrounds will be able to access funding for studying. That's really important, and it's perhaps of paramount importance at the moment, I would say. But of course, I mean, the challenge we have now is that the 5.6 billion rand shortfall for funding of university students is really going to come from budgets which also will depend on university budgets. So on the one hand, it's great that the NSFAS funding will be filled up, but that a part of that 5.6 billion rand will come from what would normally have gone to universities through the subsidy system.
I mean, what it means is that in the end, there's actually no more money in the system, from what I can see. No one's put more resources into the system. The system's just been sort of pushed and prodded a bit harder.
That's correct, and of course, and we've spoken with the minister about this, that over the last 10, 12 years, if you look at the subsidy per student, that has been in steady decline. And of course, at the same time, the cuts to Department of Science and Innovation means that money for research is in decline. And then of course, what we also know is that there's a likelihood that there might be, cuts in funding for infrastructure, for other kind of staff development programs and so on. So it's not a good story here.
Cabinet announcing a comprehensive review of the student funding policy. Is that a good idea? I mean, there's been so much heat on this issue since 2015, but really for much longer than that. But certainly since 2016, there's been a lot of heat on this issue. We saw the promise from then President Jacob Zuma for free higher education in 2017. Will a comprehensive review actually address this problem properly?
Yeah. Well, whether it will address it or not is another matter, but it's really required. I remember speaking to you in 2017, December 2017, that we were deeply concerned about the NSFAS program that had been put in place, the new bursary system. We were concerned about its sustainability. And of course, now we've got to the point where that challenge has really come to the fore. What I do think is that we need a systematic approach now, kind of a 10-year solution, but it has to include, those students that fall outside of the NSFAS funding program, and especially those students who are still kind of in the poor and working class category, but whose family earnings just exceed the 350,000 rand threshold, if you like. So I fully support the minister's kind of goals in revisiting this and to do it holistically, and that we don't leave out pockets of students. The challenge we face at University of Witwatersrand and University of KwaZulu-Natal now is really that category of students that fall outside of the NSFAS program. And we need a solution. I mean, otherwise, next year we'll be talking to you again.
It is an opportunity to try and think as a society about how we should fund this. Now, on the one side, it requires deep thought. We are a society facing many challenges: inequality, racialized inequality, poverty, and various issues, all of it exacerbated by COVID-19. And then we mustn't forget research. I mean, we need research into our problems to find solutions to them, right? So we don't want to touch research budgets. But the pressure's on. And you don't want to make changes under pressure, because that doesn't actually help us. So this is quite tough.
Correct.
Are there certain principles that maybe we could follow? I mean, maybe we need to sort of look at the missing middle and go to the halfway point of what the missing middle is, if you see what I mean, between people who receive free higher education and people who don't. And for the moment, have a cut-off and announce it now so that people know next year what they're going to be dealing with.
Yes, I think you're right. I mean, let me state three principles. You know, the first one is that we have to look for a 10-year solution. I mean, otherwise, and stick with the 10-year solution. I mean, you know, not then change it like year by year by year. Secondly, just understand that investing, that the government has to consider higher education and post-school education more generally as an area of investment, not an area of expenditure. You know? And I include research in that. That we have to think of these as investing in the lives of young people and investing in the economy of the country and investing in our democracy. So it's shifting away from this idea that this is an expenditure item rather than seeing it as an investment item. And then thirdly, it's what you pointed towards a few minutes ago. It's what you pointed towards a few seconds ago, which was that we have to think of the science system as being a fundamental requirement of an economy of our nature and democracy of the kind we have. So just to focus in on this idea that we have to think of these as investment points rather than as expenditure points. So that would be my suggestion to the government.
I mean, I'm sure you stand ready to be a part of this process. I'm sure you'll be asked for your views and consulted. Students will be asked for their views and consulted. It does mean, I mean, this is one of these issues that we need to sort out. But it would seem to me that we're going to have to spend more money on the system at a time when, as we know, government revenue is more stretched than it's ever been. I mean, I absolutely agree with you that this is an investment in our future. We need to do it, if only to redress inequality. I mean, if only for that reason, but there are plenty of other reasons. The problem, of course, is that Tito Mboweni, the finance minister, is going to come back and say, well, I also need to pay social grants.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I understand that, you know, and that's why I think that we have to think about the student funding system as a whole. You know, we think about it with all its complexities and try and understand what we can afford on the one hand, and secondly, saying, well, you know, what is it that the government invests in? You know, do we really have to think about setting aside 10 billion rand over the next 2 years on SAA? I mean, I'm not making a value judgment here. I'm just making a point. You know, do we need to spend so much money? Did we need to spend so much money on the e-toll system? You know, it's just the issue of priorities and working out what to invest in and what not to invest in. So, you know, one would hope that the government sees the investment in science as an investment in our future. You know, I feel so elevated when I hear our president and the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, when I hear them speak about the way in which the science system has come to the table with regard to COVID-19. Well, that's only because, you know, it's been invested in, you know, and that it's allowed people to flourish, you know, to become the kinds of scientists that we and social scientists that we need. You know. And by the way, our science system is globally competitive. If we let it slip, I assure you, Stephen, we will never be able to rebuild it again.
Professor Ahmed Bawa, thank you very much indeed. Sober thoughts there, the CEO of Universities South Africa. Well.